Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening's session. I'm just going to hand over to John to introduce and get us started. So, John, over to you.
Evening, everyone. Thank you very much for doing this webinar with us. I appreciate you're all busy, so it's great to have you here. Before I hand over to Mark for a chat about the platform, I just thought I'd introduce what I do. Some of you may know Cricket Yorkshire, some of you may not. So for the past 10 years, I've been writing about cricket in Yorkshire with a focus on the club game and the recreational cricket. So I've interviewed hundreds of clubs, talked to many leagues, and sort of discussed really, everything from cricket teas, which you may see if I catch you on Twitter, to the more serious stuff like sponsorship and the challenges there. In terms of this particular partnership, I heard about Snap and essentially approached Mark to see if we could do a partnership, because I think it's a really innovative platform. I couldn't see anything out there in club cricket and grassroots cricket. And I know from someone who's saw sponsorship for clubs in the past myself, there's lots of different strands to it. It can be quite complex, really frustrating. And this platform seems to do it all in one place, from kind of setting up a profile and getting the deals in, but also tracking it and renewing it and all the other stuff. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what you think about it later on in the questions. By all means, do ask some questions later on. And I think that's about it from me, really. I hope you enjoy the webinar, and I'll pass you over to Mark.
Thanks, John. Firstly, John, thank you. Delighted to be partnering on this and bringing this to a wider audience in the cricket world up in Yorkshire. So thanks, John, and thanks everyone, as John said, for taking the time out this evening to join us. I just want to introduce myself. So my name is Mark Covington, and I'm the founder of Snap Sponsorship. Founded it back in 2012. And on the call this evening, on the panel, if you like, we're also joined by Chris. Chris joins us tonight from Wakefield Thorns Cricket Club. He's actually got a profile built on the Snap platform and will be here to say a few words a bit later on. And also Will Irvine from Snap Sponsorship is also joining us, so he's on the call this evening as well. Just a bit of housekeeping before we get going. I'd just like to draw your attention to both the chat functionality and also the question functionality. So please do feel free to say hi, say who you are, where you're from, and also any questions that come up in advance now or as the session moves on, please do drop them in the question box, and we'll do our best to address them as the session unfolds. And anything we don't cover, we will certainly pick up at the end. Just to give you a little bit of a background to where we've come from and why Snap exists. So as I said, I founded Snap back in 2012. Much like many of you, I imagine, I was a volunteer at my local club, and we embarked on an ambitious project to redevelop the clubhouse. And that project saw us look at a spend of somewhere in the region of £1.2 million. We're about £500,000 short of being able to fund it. And we had historically looked at sponsorship from a very kind of philanthropic perspective. So it was very much us going to market, speaking to other people in the club that we knew, people that were in jobs or positions of influence. And I think if we were fair and truthful to ourselves, it was very much philanthropy and donation rather than what we would term as kind of hard-nosed sponsorship, as it were. And we really couldn't service £500,000 worth of loans through family fun days and bouncy castles and cake sales. So we had to put ourselves on a stronger commercial footing. And I was just looking at how we managed those sponsors that we had and how we were looking to secure new sponsors, and really saw an opportunity and a gap in the market to really professionalize this, to do it differently and support volunteers to make sure that they had the best opportunity to go and secure sponsors. So I formed an organisation called Snap with a Yorkshireman, as it happens, a guy called Simon Pennock, who was the chairman of youth at the time at the club, and Snap was formed. And we went out as a consultancy business, and we secured sponsors directly on behalf of clubs, and that was being done with human resource. What we realised very quickly is that was not a scalable model when you consider there's 215,000 amateur sports clubs in the UK, and we realised that there was a need to digitise that world of sponsorship acquisition and sponsorship management, and therefore we decided to attempt to build a platform which would do to sponsorship what Uber's done to the taxi world and Airbnb has done to the travel space. And fast forward 8 years, we've raised and moved millions of pounds from UK PLC into grassroots sport, which I'm really proud to have done, because obviously sports, we know, is the heart of our communities and really important for the future of this country and future development of young men and women. So what I want to start with this evening, if I may, is just to give you some overview information which has got nothing to do with Snap, but maybe will give you some takeaway ideas of things that you can do maybe straight away for your own clubs. And those other things I wanted to bring to your attention this evening are things like Just Giving, GoFundMe, easy fundraising, and also looking at fixed costs being covered and bills being covered by friends and fans of our clubs. So just to break those down, I'm sure many of you would have come across the likes of GoFundMe and easy fundraising. Now, these are essentially donation platforms, places where you can put a pitch up on the internet and friends, family, members of the club can donate. And we've seen some phenomenal generosity throughout this whole pandemic with COVID shutting down our clubs and stopping sport and training being participated in by our members. And that's been a hugely welcome income stream for many clubs, and has been the survival of many clubs up and down the country in multiple different sports. So, you know, I mention these because I'm still amazed at how many people haven't yet come across these platforms. So, you know, there may be someone on tonight's call, so I thought I'd mention it. So these are simple donation platforms where digitally you can get a donation from multiple people very quickly. Easy fundraising is another one that I'd just bring to your attention. So just Giving and GoFundMe is donation. Easy fundraising is where you can set up yourself as a recipient of cashback from the shopping that is done by your members, and it's got a huge array of usable third-party retail sites. So, for example, if one of your members were to shop in a Tesco store or an Aldi or a Sainsbury's, those purchases can then prompt a cashback, which then can be filtered back into your club. And again, is something that you should absolutely be considering as an additional revenue stream for yourselves. The final one was I talked about bills, and it relates back to the Just Giving and GoFundMe examples I gave earlier. We've had some really interesting feedback over the last 12 months about the nervousness of some people, or the lack of willingness to donate into what they might describe as a black hole, into an area where they don't know necessarily where the money's going. And therefore, what we've seen on the Snap platform, and I'll be showing you slightly later this evening, is the ability to list bills and your fixed costs as assets and opportunities. So we've seen, for example, clubs listing an asset for utilities, and then seeing gas, electric, water, and other bills and insurances being listed with their direct debit. So £46.80 for electricity in January 2021, and somebody can sponsor and cover that item. So of course, if we can't generate sponsorship revenue, then we can certainly cover some of our costs. And that tangibility, that kind of specification of the item, gives a lot of people the confidence to give where they may not have otherwise been willing to do so. And then finally, I just wanted to bring your attention to an organisation called Dice Rugby Club, and these guys have bucked the trend, as have many clubs throughout this whole pandemic, and have been super successful in securing sponsorship all the way through this lockdown period, having played no sport at all. And if I just actually switch over to this other screen and show you this guy's profile, this is Dice Rugby Club. They're based in Aberdeen. They're a membership club of about 50 players. They only have about 20 of those players that pay their subs. The clubhouse is the local pub, and the pitch they play on is rented from the council. So why I give you this context is because geographically they're the furthest organisation that we have on the platform from where we're based as a business. They are on paper probably one of the least sponsorable properties, one of the least sponsorable clubs that we have on paper, but yet these guys have been successful in securing 13 sponsors since the start of lockdown, having not pulled on a jersey and not walked on the pitch. This is what their external profile looks like. This is a cover image, and I'll be going through some of this profile information a bit later on. But that's what Dice look like. And if I just flick back over again to the other screen, if I go onto this Twitter thread, you'll see how they've gone about being extremely successful. And I'll be talking about this a bit later on in more detail, but here Dice have managed to identify the fact that there are some common costs, products and services that all of their members will continue to purchase all the way through lockdown or recession, that are simply unavoidable. And one of those is MOTs. So Dice identified the fact that of their 50 members, they drive 50 cars, and those 50 cars all require an annual MOT. And if you go on Google and look what the average failure rate is of MOTs, and then also look at what the average remedial costs are for MOT failures, you can very quickly work out some sums on what they may be worth to a potential sponsor. And we identified that Dice Rugby Club was conservatively worth at least £5,000 a year to a local garage. So they use one of our tools, which we call social sharing, which I'll be showing you later, to post about the fact that they have water bottles available for sponsorship. They've then quoted their own tweet and used the hashtag local garages. And having done that and having posted that to Twitter, if we scroll down this thread, they've gone on to tag multiple other garages. Again, very simply done by Googling garages near me, and it will give you a list. You can simply find their Twitter handles. And you'll see here that CGE Garages came back on the very same day and asked them to contact them. What unfolded after inspiring Dice to take this action is that they applied this same methodology to multiple other products and services that their members purchase. So hairdressing, window cleaning, etc. And as I say, went on to secure 7 sponsors in one day and 13 in total now during lockdown. Then on a loan, here's a cricket club. They use the exact same methodology. They went one stage further, and they've identified here some actual potential revenue streams using some very conservative numbers for this hairdresser. So, you know, they're looking at a 10% uptake from their 200 members at £10 per haircut, 12 times a year, £2,400. And again, use the same method of tagging in some hairdressers. So there's just a bit of an intro before we really get into the nuts and bolts of this evening, just to hopefully show you that there are lots of avenues and lots of pillars, as I like to call them, of revenue that you could be exploring, all of which have nothing to do with Snap sponsorship, but will hopefully help you as a sports club, regardless of what you think of the Snap platform as we go through the rest of this evening. And just also the latter part of what I've just shown you there, to dispel any myth that, you know, we can't get sponsored at the moment because, you know, we're in a lockdown and we're not playing any sport. So you know, we've seen the success that Dice and other clubs like them have been having. So there's just a bit of an intro. What I wanted to do now, if it's okay, is I just want to hand over to Chris just to say a few words on their profile. And if I just again flick over to the other screen, Chris has been on the platform for a very short period of time. I'm sure many of you will know Chris from the fact that we're up in the same part of the world. And so here's Wakefield Thorns Cricket Club profile. And Chris, just love you to say a few words, very openly, very honestly. I know we've had some challenges getting this built, but I think we're looking like we're in a pretty good place now. So Chris, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Yeah, Chris Foggett, chairman of Wakefield Thorns Cricket Club. I'd like to say one of the people charged with trying to find sponsorship at Wakefield Thorns. I think probably most of the time it seems like I'm the only person trying to seek sponsorship. But I saw John Fuller mentioned Snap in an article possibly before Christmas, and made a kind of mental note of the fact that it was something I wanted to pursue. I finally got around to it perhaps no more than 3 or 4 days ago. So over the last 3 or 4 days, I've invested a fair bit of time in putting together the profile that Mark is now showing you. We're certainly not as far down the road as a couple of the previous profiles that Mark made reference to. Indeed, it was only yesterday that we completed putting together the profile and we're able to go live with this. And again, I'll spend a fair bit of time today getting to that point. I guess like most people at most cricket or indeed sports clubs. For sponsorship in the past, we've pursued some fairly traditional routes in terms of people who are club contacts, players, members at the club who have their businesses, parents of juniors. And in that respect, again, like most clubs, we've been moderately successful. But that, on the whole, perhaps reflects almost a different era, really. And I think I, for one, decided it was time to look at something slightly more sophisticated, something that used social media in a much better, much more effective fashion. And certainly, talking to Mark and his colleagues, Verity in particular, over the last 2 or 3 days, I've had significant amount of help in putting together the profile that you now see, and really resolving any glitches that occurred along the way. And I have to say, most of those glitches result of the fact that club chairmen or club volunteers of a certain age are not altogether au fait with some of the kind of technology that's needed to make these things work effectively. Certainly with Verity, with Mark's help, we spent 2 or 3 days resolving those, and I think now we're in a position to kind of move forward with a live profile and pursue many of the other opportunities and avenues that clubs have demonstrably used to date. So I kind of look forward to moving forward with the profile and doing more to generate interest, contacts, sponsorship locally.
Chris, thanks very much indeed. And really grateful for you, first of all, taking the leap of faith and going ahead and signing up with us. So welcome on board, and I'm really confident of where we're going to get to in the next few weeks and months ahead. So delighted that we've managed to get your profile up and live in a few days, and thanks for your commitment in getting that built. So just one other profile I'll bring to your attention before I dive into the main part of the actual system. This is Brumbo Cricket Club. Again, just wanted to show you another cricket club. Granted, they've got some phenomenal imagery here. The son of the chairman happens to do a bit of aerial photography. But this profile, why I wanted to show this one in particular, this was built by the club secretary, a lady called Jane. She's gone on to load all 15 of their existing sponsors. They've got all their assets and opportunities loaded here, the things that they have available for sponsorship, and they built a phenomenal profile. And similar to Chris, Jane took a couple of days, couple of evenings, a couple of hours each evening for a couple of evenings to build the profile, and actually never spoke to anyone at Snap before contacting us to ask to go live. So this has been done entirely autonomous of any input from someone at Snap, and that's actually a couple of the issues that Chris faced were problems that we had to fix that he wouldn't be able to fix anyway. So just to again give some contrast, it's another club with another great profile which has got off to a fast start and already secured some sponsors. So just going to jump back over now to this profile. So this is a fictitious profile, one we've made up for the purpose of orientating you around and showing you what it is that we do here at Snap. And so therefore we've got Big Town Cricket Club in front of us here. So I just wanted to start with give you a little orientation of the dashboard. And here you'll see that we've got a cover image, a logo, we've got a go live bar here. So as we complete the building of the profile, this green bar fills up, and then when it gets to 100%, there's a button that pops up where it currently says edit profile and gives you the opportunity to request go live. That lands with the team here at Snap, and we will review it, and we will give you any feedback or guidance that's required to build that profile and get it to the point where it needs to be suitable for the market. We've got a sponsorship goal here, so this has got an audacious goal of £100,000 by the back end of 2021, and so far we've got nothing towards our target. We've got social sharing, which I'll come back to because that's quite a powerful piece of functionality in the platform. We've got our deals section here, and importantly, these deals are identified, but also we have a piece of functionality here that shows deals that require attention. So importantly here, all of those things that we might have historically relied on, our memory, a calendar entry, a note in an Excel spreadsheet for when things are due for renewal, that would all be thrust under our nose to make sure that we don't miss any of those important anniversaries. We've got a messaging system, so being able to correspond with our sponsors. We've got our assets and opportunities, and I'll come back to those in a bit of detail in just a second. And then we've got some task management here. So when we do a deal, we need to identify who needs to do what by when to make sure the deal is a success. And that might be really practical things like printing shirts or providing logos on time from sponsors. All of that detail can be captured to make sure we don't miss anything. And then as we go down here, we've just got some a list of the connections that we have and then how we edit our profile. So that's kind of a very brief orientation of our dashboard. And I said I wanted to spend a bit of time in assets and opportunities. So if I just pop into here, you'll see that we've looked at how we digitize what may have historically been a sponsorship brochure, maybe something which was A5 glossy, 5-10 pages long, or maybe it was a PDF document with a gold, silver and bronze package. However it is that you currently display your sponsorship opportunities, this is our equivalent. So here we've got the ability to create an asset, and an asset would be maybe the pitch furniture, and one of the opportunities that would sit within that category, we would create it here, and that might be the wicket covers or the sight screens. So the asset is essentially something which is a container which holds all of the opportunities within it. So again, a different example, if we were to stray across to football, it might be the first 11 football shirt would be the asset, and the left sleeve and right sleeve would be the opportunities. So it's the opportunities that a sponsor can actually sponsor. So that's the assets and opportunities, and by filling in those assets and opportunities, it's like digitizing that traditional sponsorship brochure that we might currently use, or that little PDF document that we currently send around to people. Now, assuming we've come on and we've registered a Snap profile and we've built our platform, it's a bit like getting our leasing or renting a shop on a high street. So we've taken that first step towards opening our retail outlet. We then need to stock the shelves in that outlet. So building those assets and opportunities that I've just shown you is like stocking those shelves with the t-shirts and trousers, as it were. And then ultimately we need to tell the world that we're open for business. And that brings us nicely into this social sharing tool that we built here. If I go to create a new post, there are many of you that may be on this call that have heard of things like Hootsuite or TweetDeck or Buffer. And all of those three platforms are social aggregation tools. So they enable you to post to multiple social channels simultaneously. And if I was to take the market leader of Hootsuite, a Hootsuite profile is £99 per month for a multi-user license. Here we built that functionality, but with some real specifics around sponsorship into the Snap sponsorship platform. So here I've got the ability to connect Twitter, LinkedIn and Facebook. I've just done Twitter for the sake of this evening. If I click Twitter and then use a suggested text, we've taken away all of the requirement for you to think about words, hyperlinks, hashtags. So all of that content that may have been a barrier to making the decision to get that first post out, we've removed. We know that that might not be the right tone of voice, so we give you the ability to edit that, and then you can post that straight to one of your feeds. We've taken it 2 stages further, so we can also promote opportunities. So when I've built my inventory, so we talked about stocking the shop windows, building those assets and opportunities, they will appear here. So I have the ability to promote the fact that I want to get my net sponsored. Now it pulls through the image that I've loaded about that opportunity, and you'll notice that the text has changed here. So when I use that, again, I haven't had to think about any of the links, the URLs to get me back to the profile, or indeed the image, and I can post that as well. Finally, we've also considered how we can promote, thank, acknowledge and engage our sponsors. And again, this is all functionality that we've built in collaboration with volunteers, much like yourselves, from sports clubs all across the country. And the reason that this one has been particularly well received and was asked for a lot from various different clubs was I can now click Zetra, which is one of my sponsors. It pulls through their logo, it changes the words again, I can edit it, but I can now also schedule this post. And I could have done this with the opportunity or the generic post at the start, but here you'll see that I can set this to repeat. It might be that we've got the first ball being bowled at 11 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, so I can set that to 11 o'clock and I can ask that to run all the way to 2022. And so therefore, I've now got this set to acknowledge Zetra every Saturday at 11 o'clock all the way through to 2022, and I can click post. Now, if you imagine that, I could do that exact same process probably in 10 minutes at the start of the season, setting up at half-an-hour intervals in the lead up to the first ball being bowled, that every Saturday, each of my sponsors gets an acknowledgement ahead of the start of our match. And if I come down to the calendar here, I can see that that post has been scheduled. And I can, of course, go into that, edit it, change the day, the content, or indeed remove it altogether. So when we think of it from that perspective, in terms of the time we can potentially save, the fact that we don't have to think of the images, the content, the links, etc., it's a massive time saver and a direct route to being able to post content for yourselves as a club. And if I go back to our profile here on our fictitious Twitter account, Big Town Cricket Club, I can see that all of that content has pulled through as we've posted it. So that's our social sharing tool. So again, just briefly recapping, we've got to the point where we've digitized our sponsorship inventory. We've told the world that we're available for business with the social sharing tool. And I'd remind you of that Twitter feed I showed you for Dice Rugby Club, where they've gone one stage further and tagged those businesses in, which is a really strong way of engaging potential sponsors. We now need to assume that we've had some engagement with a sponsor, and for showing you that, I'm just going to flick back over to this club profile. And this is a fictitious organisation called Zetra, and we know that we've got Big Town Cricket Club. Now, I'm not going to refine the search criterion here too far, because we know that Big Town Cricket Club exists. We don't need to use all of this refinement criteria that we've got in the system. And that refinement criteria is much like you'd see in something like Auto Trader. If we were looking to purchase a new car, it may well be that we want a 4x4 which has got a 3-litre engine with an automatic transmission. So here we can choose distance from the postcode. So it might be, we say, a 100-mile radius of this postcode that's got more than 1,000 members, that plays cricket and has a ladies team, for example. But we're going to cheat and jump straight to Big Town RFC, and it shows me the opportunities they have available for sponsorship. So if I flick through the pages of opportunities that they have, we can see the various things they've got loaded. So it might be that I want to sponsor the front of the shirt. So if I click view more, it takes me in, it gives me the opportunity to play around with my logo, look at what it might look like on their shirt. And I can see the description of what's available, the benefits of sponsoring them, and I have the ability to express an interest. So if I express an interest at this point, I can very simply say I'm interested for the sake of speed. This evening, I can simply say I'm interested and press post. Once I've done that, if I just very briefly shoot back over to the club side, you'll see here that I've got a notification, and that notification tells me that someone's been looking at my profile. Now, that would have been accompanied by an email, because we appreciate you're not always going to be sitting looking at the Snap account. So it's a bit like receiving a LinkedIn request, and by me responding now saying great, that is like accepting that LinkedIn connection request. Now, we've now formed a negotiation between these two parties, and you'll see on the right-hand side of the screen here, I've got the ability to change this to a handshake agreement. So if I was sponsoring a match ball for £20 at the weekend, nobody really wants to see an agreement for that, and I can use a good old-fashioned handshake. We've got a snap contract, or if we're being approached by a major brand, they may well be looking to dictate the terms to us. So for now, I'm going to leave it on the snap contract. I can agree the deal, preview it, or dismiss it, which is all probably slightly premature. I can change the payment schedule, so it may well be that we want a monthly payment. That importantly updates and timestamps the chat here on the left. I can add in opportunities, so it might be that I'd like to also sponsor one of the match balls, and I can put that in, and I add that, and it brings up the total of the deal. It might be as a result of taking that, we can also update the price. It may well be that the sponsor has negotiated the price based on those items being put into the package. And then finally, I can add activation. So if someone's sponsoring the shirt, we might need to produce that shirt, and it might have a cost of £100. I can add that activation in, and that activation can be used to design and develop intelligent ways to bring that sponsor to life amongst your members and amongst your fans, or it may well be used in a very tactical way to list out the tasks that need to be done. So if it was a butcher's who was looking to sell more sausages, it may well be that they come down and run a sampling on the boundary with a lovely barbecue on a Saturday afternoon, for example. Equally, in this instance, it may well be that they just want the brand presence on the shirt, and therefore someone needs to provide the logo. And if we provide that logo, that's going to be the responsibility of the sponsor. It's pending, and it needs to be done by the 23rd, and so on. And I could add as many tasks into this as I so desired to make sure I bring to life that activation as it was intended. That will do for the sake of showing you. So if I return to this deal now, I've got a price, it's paid monthly, I've got 2 items included in the deal, and I've got an activation. Now, if I was to go ahead and agree this now, it would lock down the deal, send the contracts to both parties, and instruct the club how to invoice the sponsor for their fee. Prior to doing that though, I'm just going to preview the deal, and by previewing it, it launches this other tab, which then shows me who the 2 contracting parties are, some very neutral, vanilla, non-legal jargon, T's and C's. And as we come down to the schedules here, we can see who the 2 contracting parties are, the opportunities, a breakdown of the amortized monthly payments, and then the activations, and finally the transcript of the conversation that we've had. So there's no ambiguity. And if I were to agree that deal, which I won't because it will start firing emails off here, there, and everywhere, I would have if I clicked agree deal here, it would give the sponsor the final opportunity to then accept this deal or decline it. Now, I'm sure there would have been a lot more conversation in the real world, but if I was just to click agree that deal and switch back over to my sponsor side and have a look here, I'll see that 4 seconds ago, one of my deals has been agreed by the other party. All of that's pulled through to my side, and I can now just preview, confirm, or reject this deal as the sponsor. If I wasn't logged in to Snap and I simply came to Snap as an outsider, I didn't have a profile, I still have the ability to go to the sponsors page, and I can search for Big Town Cricket Club, and I simply have the same view, but I can look at these items, and much like an e-commerce transaction, I can add it to my cart and check out. And the beauty of that is we can have someone come in, check out, and go away from the platform. You wouldn't have had to have all of that negotiation and conversation with them, but ultimately you still remain in control. So once this outsider, if you like, this non-registered user comes in and attempts to check out and buy this site screen, it doesn't matter the fact that they aren't registered, because they can the deal will come through to you, and you will have the discretion to either accept or decline the deal. Okay, so that's how the deals work. So again, recapping, we've digitized our brochure. We've told the world that we're open for business using the social sharing tool. We've looked at how we can then transact deals. And then finally, we can create pre-existing sponsors. And this is really important because it's not just about securing new sponsors, it's also about managing those that you already have. So here I have the ability to say this is the create pre-existing sponsors function, which comes from the account menu. So here, as we go into the pre-existing sponsors area, we can select a sponsor that may already be in the system, or it might be the local butcher. And by selecting the local butcher, we have this drop down to add in all of their details. I can invite them to Snap, which gives me the ability to use these this email we've pre-written for you, and it will you can obviously put your spin on it and tell them that you're using Snap, and here's a link for them to come and have a look around. You set the contract type, so it might be a handshake. You select how they paid you, so it might have been up front. You identify what it is that they sponsored, and then ultimately by creating that deal down here at the bottom, they'll then go and live in this pre-existing sponsor list down here. And why that's important is we've now got a holistic picture of both your existing sponsors and any new ones you've secured in Snap. And it brings us on to the final part of the key functionality that I really want to show you this evening, which is then this reporting. So as volunteers, some of you may still be working day jobs, 9 till 5, super busy, rushing home from work, jumping off a train, pouring with rain, and you've got that committee meeting on Thursday night at 7:30. And the Excel spreadsheet isn't up to date. We can't exactly remember what the numbers are, who the latest sponsor is, etc. All of those challenges, again, the feedback we've taken from clubs, we can do away with by having this sponsorship reporting tool. So we've got a summary here at the top, which just gives us the deals that we've got. And then down here, we've got some granularity, so we can expand this, look at all of our deals, where we are in terms of the deliverables. Are we running behind, or are they pending but imminent? And we can also look at the start, end dates, and the costs. So we've got all the information we need at our fingertips that we can export to PDF, CSV file, Excel, and send around to our fellow committee members. And this all lives and breathes in real time to ensure that we don't ever fall foul of not having the information we need to make good decisions and ultimately do the best job we possibly can as volunteers at our club. So we can professionalize the activity that we're doing it with hopefully a minimum of time input, because we get this efficiency and professionalism from the tools and knowledge and education that we provide in the system. That kind of concludes the kind of life cycle, if you like, of sponsorship and the use of the tools I wanted to show it this evening. You'll notice just from this account menu alone, there's a whole load more functionality that I haven't shown you yet this evening, but I'm really conscious that I want to give you a chance to ask questions rather than me just fly through all of it. So what we've covered is obviously, as again, just to recap, the digitization of our assets and opportunities, that's social sharing, telling the world that we're there, how we do deals in the Snap platform, and then how we report on those and then take them back round and put them back in the top and re-secure them the following year. So that's the key items of functionality. So really what I'd like to do now is address any questions that have been raised as we've gone through. So I wonder, Will, if you could, I can see a couple here in the list, but Will, if you want to call some out for me, and I'll do my best.
Yeah, got a few questions here so far, so we'll just run through them in order that they came through to me. I would just say before we start answering these, that these questions that you might not have asked yet can be specific to your club, so any situation that you're currently in, or just more broadly about sponsorship, doesn't have to be about the Snap platform as well. But Mark, the first question is, what is the price per user? It's probably one that I will take, bearing in mind tonight's call around partnerships. So Mark introduced me at the start. I'm obviously the partnerships manager at Snap, so I've built this relationship with John, and through this partnership, we have a specific benefit to you guys because of our partnership with Cricket Yorkshire. So to answer the question, the price per user, we don't have a price per independent user because the Snap platform doesn't restrict the number of people that you can assign at your club. So the price is per club, and that is the only money you will ever pay Snap. So we don't take a commission either. So it doesn't matter if you secure £1,000 on the Snap platform or 100,000 or $1 million. And that price is £9 per month if it wasn't, you weren't doing this through a partnership. So that £9 is based on the average price of the cost of being a member to any sports club across the UK. And that is a piece of data from a Sport Recreation Alliance questionnaire in 2018. But through this partnership, we have sorted out a deal whereby you get 12 months for the price of 11 on the platform, or £8.25 or £99 per year. So £8.25 per month per club. Just to clarify, obviously we're not restricting users, so you can add as many users to the Snap platform as possible, so you can delegate and obviously share the workload of building a Snap platform, and then obviously those sponsorship relationships. Just a quick one on that as well. So that price of £9 a month or £8.25 through the partnership is it tracks that average cost of being a member to a sports club. So if in the coming months we see that price increase, which we anticipate will, not astronomically, but maybe by a couple of pounds here or there, that price will increase. But we promise that it will always track the average cost of being a member to a sports club. Obviously, this night has been all around cricket clubs, but the Snap platform is multi-sport. So to make it fair for all sports clubs across the country, it's just based upon the average price of being a sports club, rather than being done regionally or nationally per sport. So just the average price of being a member of a sports club across the UK. So just to clarify, it's £8.25 per club through the partnership code with Cricket Yorkshire. Mark, the next question we have.
Can I say one other thing to that, Will? Just so, as Will quite rightly pointed out, with the Cricket Yorkshire promo code, it's only £8.25. And Will said there's absolutely zero commission, so 100% of what you collect is kept by you. The one thing I'd just like to add to that is to cover off, I suppose, all of the commercials, is that there is no tie-in long-term contract. So if you were to decide on the 29th day of the month that it isn't right for you, you can cancel and never pay a second instalment. So it's monthly rolling. Your maximum exposure at any time is that 1 month's £8.25. So that was just the last bit I'd like to add to that. Sorry to interrupt, Will. What's the next question?
The next question is, I've actually got two that I want to tie together because I know that there's an answer that you'll be able to put together for both of these, Mark. So the first question is, how do sponsors find us as a club? And the second question is, what's the average return on investment of setting this up across your users? So I'll leave you to answer that one, but I know you'll be able to dwindle those two into one answer.
Yeah, okay. So I'll kind of address them separately, but I'll address them separately. So first of all, in terms of how sponsors find you, it is very much what I describe as a bottom up and a top down approach. So what I describe as top down is where we have brands that are engaged on the platform. We have around 3,000 registered sponsors on the platform. However, I would very much say that we are looking for a collective group of clubs in a particular region, hence why we're setting up these partnerships to enable us to create the critical mass that will really turn the heads of larger regional and national sponsors. So I would always see that and perceive that as a benefit and a bonus rather than the primary way in which you secure new revenue from the Snap platform. So what I would say is I'd rather emphasize the bottom up approach, and I'll give you kind of, from what our stats tell us, the top 3 ways where clubs are securing sponsorship using snapsponsorship.com. And the first is that social sharing tool, and by far still our most prominent tool for securing sponsorship. And you saw how Dice have managed to share one of their opportunities, tag in local businesses, and be really quite direct with prompting them as individuals, using those @handles to identify those garages. That's been by far our most prolific methodology that's seen great acquisition of sponsors. The second of the top 3 items is additional revenue from current sponsors. And I mentioned and I showed you earlier how we add our pre-existing sponsors into the platform, and we have that ability to tick a box and invite them, and we've pre-written you an email. And the nice thing about that is when it says, XYZ Cricket Club is now using Snap sponsorship and has acknowledged you as a sponsor, and also you can tailor that email as you see fit. It includes a link for them to come and see your profile. And what we found is that existing sponsors have come on and said, oh, I didn't realize the club needed this, or there was the ability to have that. And we found that the existing sponsors are spending more with the clubs that they already sponsor. So that's the second. And then third and finally on kind of the top 3 revenue earners is from our existing members and fans that support the club. So we very often find that amongst maybe smaller, larger clubs, it's really irrelevant. There'll be individuals in the club, maybe mum or dad of little Johnny or little Jane, who haven't yet realised or understood who to speak to, or the fact that there was even the ability to sponsor the club. So by putting this out on social channels, in the club newsletter, we've seen that lots of clubs have identified they've got people that have maybe been members for 4, 5, 6 years. And my favourite example is there's an organisation called Dome Recruitment. They sponsored a club called Guildford Rugby Club. That started from an under-12s head coach who had joined the club in the under-6s with his son, and he'd been the head coach of his age group all the way through from 6s to 12s. They started using the platform, and the guy comes in and sponsors the club for a fairly significant sum of money. And he had no sponsorship engagement with the club prior to that, and seen the platform and taken the plunge, which was great. So they're the top 3 ways that we've seen it being used. But I'd like to take this opportunity just to mention something else which has come to mind as I've been saying that. And I want to give you this as an example, much like the Dice one of the car garages. There has been lots of winners and unfortunately a heck of a lot of losers in the world of business from this whole COVID pandemic. And if we just pick on one of the winners for a second, obviously the Chancellor's announcement that's reduced stamp duty has meant that we've seen some buoyancy around the property market. And if we take a cross section of your club and look at some national averages of how many people move per 100 people per annum, there's no doubt a number of people that will move house throughout the course of the season in your cricket club. And those estate agents aren't standalone in the services they provide to make that whole transaction happen, which is kind of stating the obvious, I'm sure you all can appreciate. Alongside those estate agents, there be surveyors, there be removals companies, there be mortgage advisors, there be lawyers, all of which are required to make that will turn. And I'd be encouraging all of you, whether or not you use Snap following tonight's session, to go away and target your local estate agent if you don't already have one. And the beauty of securing someone like an estate agent is you can be really smart with how you do your activations. And again, you can maybe bring them in on a relatively low cost entry point, but then wrap around that deal the ability to earn more money. So maybe every time a house is sold or a place is rented, that there is some type of trickle commission back to the club. So what might start as a relatively small deal can grow maybe quite quickly by the end of the season. And what's more is if you secure that individual, that estate agency partner as a sponsor, they will have contacts in all of those service providing industries that I just described around removals and legal and mortgage advisors and surveyors. So if you ask them to refer you to those partners, they've got no reason not to introduce you. And collectively, if you can sell the value of your club membership and the wider network that your club has to each of those, you could very quickly snowball one deal into 4, 5, or 6 potential deals, which may, depending on your aspirations, be all the sponsorship revenue you need over the course of the season. And when you consider that the 1% or the 0.5%, 0.7% that an estate agency charges, and you work out the average house price of your members in your area, and then you bolt on all the other service providers I've just mentioned, and then build that up over the number of people you think move at your club per year, you'll realize that amongst those 5 or 6 service providers, your members probably spend a huge eye-watering sum of money with them. So therein lies an opportunity. So for me, that's how I would be approaching my sponsorship today if I were back in my club as a volunteer again. So sorry, that's quite a long-winded answer to how do we go about finding sponsors. But for me, I'd very much be focusing on the bottom up, the three key prongs I described, and there's a live example of what I'd be attacking tomorrow morning with me in my club. Sorry, Will.
So yeah, the other one of that, the other one that was off the back of that was what's the average return on investment percent?
Oh, sorry.
I'll take that one. That's fine. The reason that I kind of said to Mark to spin that into 2 answers is because we generally cover that social sharing approach in this answer, so getting our opportunities in front of new sponsors. And the answer to the return on investment is the figure that we have is across all of our members, users that sign up and share the workload between 2 other members of their team. So there's 3 of them at the club on the Snap platform, and they use the social sharing tool to get their opportunities out in front of new sponsors. They're achieving 100 times ROI on that £9 a month, on that £9 a month fee. So obviously on that £8, if of that 8 to 25, sorry, Mark's just messaged me on a different line. He says it's 10,000 times ROI.
Yeah, so 100 times ROI is our average stat. We've actually just creeped over that number. So 100 times ROI on the £9 per month with any club that's got 3 or more users. So we're seeing a 10k return on that investment. So what we found over the last certainly 2 years in particular is a real strong link between multi-user sign up, multiple users within a single club and success. And that's not frankly any surprise, and I doubt will be any surprise to any of you on the call this evening. And put simply, if we can share the workload and pull in the correct people to do the correct jobs, we will absolutely be more successful. And that goes for most things in life. But if we use the example that Chris gave us when he was talking to us earlier about Wakefield Thorns, it may well be that there's a social media or comms guru, maybe dare I say, a youngster in the Colts who might be the right person to add on as a user to your profile to help you with this social sharing and tagging local businesses. It may well be stereotypically that it needs to be the chairman that ultimately has the control of putting the hammer down and doing a deal. But what we've seen is any club that's got 3 or more users has received over 100% ROI on their subscriptions, so or subscription charge. So I would just stress to you that that sharing of the load is what's given us that kind of statistic, which is I'm pleased to say slowly creeping up as well. So £100 over the course of a year for 10k back has been a pretty strong proposition.
I've got another question in here, which is actually I've got 3 more questions, so we might slightly run over the hour-long call. But how do you? So the question is, how do you guide the clubs in pitching sponsor prices? And the example that they've given is there's a couple of cricket clubs on the platform already that they've seen that have a 2k main shirt sponsor, and then another cricket club that's got a rather ambitious 30k. For 30k for the same opportunity for that front of shirt. So the question is, how do we guide in pitching sponsor prices?
Okay. This one, I'll take this one, Will, because I think this is really important because I know exactly the clubs you're talking about. So the one that's up at 30k is a club in Surrey, which is called Valley End. So you've got geographical variation there, but I would give you a different example to kind of hopefully personify the point. So I've got 2 right where I'm sitting now. I've got 2 rugby clubs in either direction from where I'm sitting, and one of them plays in the National 3 League, so 4 below Prem. They've got a club which is in an area of outstanding natural beauty. They've got no pitch surround because they can't because of where they're situated in that area of outstanding natural beauty, and therefore between some rickety rope and post, they suspend 2 metre by 1 metre PVC banners that go up for the I think it's about 15 home games a year, and they go up for 80 minutes and then they come back down at the end. And for those banners, they charge £1,500 a year plus cost plus installation. So you compare that to the club which is in the other direction that plays in a high league that has a beautiful pitch surround, fully installed, brand new fencing, digital scoreboard. They install all of their boards on aluminium composite, and they've got a 7-day-a-week business in their clubhouse where they rent it out to various different organisations, businesses, etc. So they've got a 7-day-a-week business, therefore they've got 7 days a week of exposure to that board, which is up permanently in a much nicer site, playing at a higher level of rugby, and they charge £250 for a board per annum. And in the first year, they absorb the cost of producing this aluminium composite board in the price. And why I stress that example is that there is very little logic today in grassroots sponsorship pricing. And that is something that as we go through the years and as our data set starts to grow, we will be in a position, and I anticipate that some of the functionality in the Snap system will enable us to advise you on prices as you start listing your opportunities based on geography, sport type, level of play. But today, it really is based on, frankly, what it is that you can propose the value is back to a sponsor. And all I'd say is that you need to look at what the reality is of what value you think you can offer in return. And I'll go back to my estate agency example to say, if you consider those rough equations and you could very quickly come up with some numbers based on whatever the average fee rate is of an estate agent in your area. If it were 1% and you think you're going to sell 3 houses a year and the average house price is 350,000, we could very quickly make some assumptions about what value we think this partnership might be worth to the sponsor over the course of that year. It may well be that you decide to pitch an item to them which is a quarter or half of that revenue that they might receive. Alternatively, you might go for a lower number and then look at how you can build in some upside from a win-win deal that maybe gives them the opportunity to give some sort of rebate back to the club on successful deals being transacted with through the club members. So that's my kind of piece on pricing, and I really think it's a case of identifying what the objectives are first and foremost of that sponsor to enable you to make sure that how you price the opportunity either meets their ROI objectives based on the pounds and pence, or alternatively, does satisfy whatever objective that they have from a marketing point of view. That may well be awareness or something else.
Cool.
So,
Mark, I am the chairman of a cricket club who has little experience in social media and setting up a platform. So what help and guidance does Snap give for me to be successful?
Okay. Will, am I still sharing my screen? Can you still see?
Sharing your screen, yeah.
Okay. So in terms of help and support, so if someone comes and signs up to Snap, they are assigned an account manager. So Chris over at Wakeful Thorns mentioned earlier Verity. Verity is one of our account managers. If you sign up, Verity amongst all the other account managers get a notification, and it's first to get to you will reach out and look to book in some time to come and support you on the build. So they will do a one-to-one call with you and support you in the build process and how to use some of that key functionality. But on the screen, if I'm still sharing it here, if I just draw your attention to the left-hand side, this knowledge base, if I click on that, you'll see that a whole series of items come up, many of which have got a strike through because I've already completed them in this profile. But if I were to go to create an opportunity, you'll see that this box jumps across and it takes me to the various, the section in question, building assets and opportunities. And by clicking on that next one, it launches a video. And if I click start, it will then take me through that video and then take me to how to create an opportunity. So every step of the way, that knowledge base gives you guidance on how to build the profile, and it will teach you and tell you how to go about using that social sharing tool and using the social media. Now, so not only in there do we have these guidance notes, but we also have how particles. So all of that best practice, how Dice attracted a garage, we bottle all of that and we share that across the country. So in here, all of that inspiration about how to go about doing it is all contained in the platform. If you don't get the answer from the knowledge base, there's a little robot here at the top. You ask it a question, it's fairly good at giving you the right answer. And finally, if failing all of that, here you've got the ability to talk to a human. So you can come in and chat to someone from the team here at Snap. So if it's a technical question, we can route you in the right direction. If it's commercial, or you're just looking for some inspiration or maybe a discussion around the pricing of your items, we can chat through that with you in here. So hopefully that covers that one, Will.
Perfect. What I'm going to say is we've got 3 more questions in there, which we will obviously answer. To anyone else that has any questions, hold on to them. After this webinar, the webinar will be sent out as a recording as a follow-up. And by all means, contact us by email and set up a no strings attached, like an hour-long call with us, and we can demo the other stuff that's on here that you haven't seen and also answer any questions. Again, no strings attached. We're happy to spend some time with you off this webinar as well. So the last 3 questions, Mark, I'll take this one, which is how do you link the Snap platform to your own website and social media channels so potential sponsors can reach you if you tweeted or posted on Facebook? So that's kind of 2 questions in itself. The first one regarding linking it to your website. Snap itself doesn't replace a part of your website, but what we encourage you to do is where you put your sponsorship opportunities generally, or you say contact us for sponsor opportunities or partner opportunities, link in your Snap profile with a URL. And that way, then you're able to show all of your available opportunities to a sponsor rather than prescribing them a gold, silver, bronze package. Mark's just brought up Bitly there, which is a link shortener, so we can just put that in a quick link on our website profile, and a sponsor can click through. The other thing with the Snap platform as well is that on your profile on the right hand side of the screen, your contact details are available to that sponsor. So your name or someone at the club, and you can either put a generic email address or your own email address at the club and a telephone number. And what that allows a sponsor to do is if they don't want to negotiate through the platform, if they're not at that stage yet, but they want to have a conversation with you, they will obviously be able to contact you directly and have a chat about potential sponsorship opportunities that are upcoming. So there's 2 ways that I've just kind of answered that question there. Number one is that it doesn't replace a part of your website. It's a separate platform, obviously, because of all of the functionality there, and it is purely to manage your sponsorships. But by all means, link it on your website. And then if a sponsor doesn't want to go through a negotiation on the platform, they can contact you with your contact details, which are available. The second one is linking your social media channels. So when you set up your profile, that's one of the stages that will pop up on either that Access knowledge base or your account manager will walk you through. And you quite simply link your Twitter, your Facebook, and your LinkedIn with a URL, and then you log in and you give the permissions for Snap to do that, as in the platform itself to do that. And that way, when you use that social sharing tool, you can aggregate across all of those channels. So the Snap platform is then effectively your port of call to access all of your social accounts in order to be able to post across all of them. And when we use that social media tool, we can then click across LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter and post to all of those channels simultaneously with the same message and same imaging. So a couple of questions in one then. Hopefully I've answered that question. The next question that we have, Mark, is can you have too many opportunities? How many would you recommend? I'm happy to take that one. You want to take that one?
I'm happy to say that. So Paul, I don't think it's about the volume. I think it's about the variety. And everyone loads their opportunities very differently. So I really like the way that Dice Rugby Club do their player sponsorships. And I think for me, this has been really fruitful for them. And I'm just showing you now. You'll see here that Dice Rugby Club have listed their people and then their players. And then they've got each of their players by positional number. So they just effectively get the shirts 1 to 15 sponsored. And that's what one of their opportunities would look like. Other clubs do it by individual person. So John Smith, Adam Jones, Mary Jane, they actually list the individual people out. And because we categorize them down by asset type, you can still, the list can be condensed as a concertina, as you can see on the screen now. My comment around variety, for me, it's all about keep making sure you've got some good entry level sponsorship opportunities. What we don't want to do is be putting people off by pricing everyone out the market. I'd far rather we generated opportunities which had some upside. So I'd have a situation whereby we might have a low entry point, but then build in a deal where we have the opportunity to earn an upside from some win-win deals that may come off the back of it. And again, going back to the estate agency opportunity. I would say that, because we're not printing this, because we're not paying the print cost of an extra page in a sponsorship brochure, I'm of the opinion that fill your boots. The more the merrier. Just make sure there's variety. So you've got lots of different price entry points.
Thank you. And the final question we'll come to tonight, as I said, guys, any other questions, email us, and more than happy to reply by email or give you a call after this. So the final question is, if the sponsor requires an invoice, will the Snap site generate that and email it to them? So that's probably a question around contracting, and then also why we don't handle payments.
So we absolutely don't raise the invoices, and there's a simple reason for that. If we were to look at the relationship between you, us, and the sponsor as a triangle, the relationship sits firmly between you and us for your subscription to the platform, and the relationship between you and your sponsor is exactly that. It's between you and your sponsor. Technologically, the reason we don't raise invoices is I'm sure that between everyone on the call this evening, we'll have a combination of people that manage their finances on an Excel spreadsheet. Some might use Xero, Sage, QuickBooks, and all the various other accounting packages out there. And inevitably, one thing you all have in common is a sequential invoicing numbering system. So that would just be impossible for us to integrate into the technology. And actually, I really like the fact that we don't get involved in your money and your relationship between you and your sponsor. So we're here to support and facilitate the acquisition of sponsors and the management of them using the tools and the education that we provide. But fundamentally, you have the direct control, integration, relationship with your sponsor. So you will be prompted at the point at which you do a deal. The contracts are sent to both parties, and you as the club will be instructed with the information, purchase order numbers, or any other relevant contact details of the sponsor and who and how you should send them the invoice that you need to send them. Okay, Will, is that the last one?
That is the last question. I think we've covered everything for now. I'd just like to hand back over to John to just sort of tie the ends together. But just to recap, guys, like any other questions that you may have, or if you want to book a one-to-one demo, as I said, there's no strings attached to that. Please get in touch after this. We have recorded this and it will be coming out to you via email. So if you need this to take this to a committee meeting to show everyone else about the platform and potentially some of the ideas that we told you earlier on in the call, that will be coming over to you tomorrow.
Thanks, Will. John, yeah, if I could just hand back to you, and again, just as I said at the start, thanks so much for getting this partnership off the ground and getting your clubs to come and engage, and Chris for coming on and sharing your experience to date so far. So thanks guys for joining us, and all of you at home, really grateful for you giving up your evening to come and listen. So thank you. Back to you, John.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, just to thank Mark and Will for that presentation. I hope you found it really useful. Whether you use Snap or not, we're just providing info, basically inspiration, ideas, that kind of stuff. If you have any questions, obviously towards the platform, aim them at Snap, but if you've got any feedback about tonight, you want to email me. Many of you probably on the call may already have my email actually, but it's John with an H at cricketyorkshire.com. And then in the coming months, I'll be covering all sorts of topics towards helping clubs monetize what they do, sponsorship and all sorts. So keep an eye on the website. I think that's it. I think we're covered off. So enjoy the rest of your evening, whatever you get up to, and I hope you enjoyed the webinar.
Thanks very much, John.
Thanks, guys. Keep safe. Cheers now.
Thank you.